Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Barnstable Town Council meeting for October 5th, 2023. I would like to make an announcement. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, I must inquire whether anyone is recording this meeting, and if so, please make your presence known. Okay, not seeing any. Roll call, please, Town Clerk and Quirk.
Councilors, Atzelis.
Here.
Oh my goodness, Clark.
Here.
Excuse me. Cullum,
Here.
Cusack,
Present.
Rappacetti,
Present.
Levesque,
Here.
Ludke,
Here.
Mendes,
Here.
Neary, Schnapp,
Here.
Shaughnessy,
Here.
Starr, Steinhilber,
Here.
11.
Thank you. If we can all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. It is now time for public comment. If anybody here in the audience would like to speak during public comment, please come to the front and sign your name. Let us know your name and where you're from, and you would have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Bob Schulte of Centerville. I'll keep it short tonight. Good evening, councilors. I wanted to let the public and the other council members know that the petition for an open meeting of the voters to discuss citizens' issues and concerns about the proposed offshore wind projects has been certified by the town. The town has agreed to act upon the request for an open meeting, which will be scheduled in the very near future. The 4 originators of the petition met this morning with members of the town leadership and town management to discuss the specifics of the open meeting, and we felt we had a productive conversation. We want to thank them for meeting with us this morning. We expect to have an announcement on the date, time, and location for the open meeting sometime early to mid next week. However, I believe it's okay to say that we expect it to be at the Barnstable High School Performing Arts Center sometime during the week of October. The Performing Arts Center is a venue that is large enough to hold any and all citizens who wish to attend, and we hope and expect to have a large turnout. Finally, the event will be publicized in the weeks prior to the meeting date, and there are plans to set up and publicize an email address so that written questions can be submitted in advance. We anticipate the format of the event will include the use of a moderator or perhaps a co-moderator, and questions submitted via email in advance, as well as questions from the attendees, will be asked of the participants at the event. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schulte.
Hi, I'm Hector Gunther. I live in Osterville. As many of you know, I'm a vice chair of CFAC, and I'm also a steering committee member of Save Greater Dowses Beach. I'm here tonight. I don't have prepared comments, but I just want to make a couple of remarks. The news that we all got several days ago about Avangrid's terminating its power purchase agreements yet again, this one for a project for which it had already signed a contract for the town in May of 2022, is, in my perspective, a game changer. I think it calls into question, much like the termination of the Dowses of the Commonwealth PPAs, it calls into question their veracity, their truthfulness. Have they been dealing in faithfully and in good faith with the town? I think it's fair to say that the town could look at this, and by the way, I'm heartened by the 2 proposed resolutions that are on the agenda tonight. I think the town should look at this development for what it is, which is it really shows, Avangrid's true colors. I think as a legal matter and as a strategic matter, I think it gives the town the opportunity to reopen its contract with Avangrid for the Park City Wind project. I'm part of Save Greater Dowses Beach, but we are as opposed to the Park City Wind landing as we are as to the Dowses cable landing. One of the things that Save Greater Dowses Beach has accumulated over the year and some months that we've been working on this issue is that we're well recognized as authoritative. We have an authoritative viewpoint on offshore wind and on the projects that have been developed. We've issued a lot of comments to the state on the Dowses project. One of the things that we've done is we've looked at the formula for how the cash flows will come to the town per the formula that's in the HCA for the Park City Wind Agreement. And for example, some of you may know this, forgive me if you don't, but the way the formula works, and given Avangrid's tax assumptions, the HCA payment is $16 million. $8.5 million of the $16 million under the current formula, under the agreement that this town signed in May of 2022, is payable at the end of year 25, the end last year of the contract, $8.5 million, or 54% of the HCA. In my experience, and I've done a lot of financings with big companies around the world, Avangrid negotiated a very, very good deal with the town. So if you're going to look to reopen the agreement, given that Avangrid has budgeted probably $5 billion for the Park City Wind project, they could certainly afford to pay that. If you stick with the $16 million HCA payment, they could afford to pay that to the town day one, not at the end of year 25. There are a lot of other comments I could make about the agreement, but I think the town could do a lot better, and I think you should look at it, and Charlie and Karen should look at the opportunity to reopen the negotiations with Avangrid. And I know that you all probably have some points of view about the recent developments regarding the PPAs. So I'll leave it at that, but thank you for listening, and thank you for your resolutions tonight, and we look forward to continuing to work with you to get good transactions for the town, and hopefully finding a better place to land the Park City Wind power cables and the Dowses Beach power cables. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gunther.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff Avery, class of 1986. Nice to see us all well represented here. I'm here not as a resident of the town of Barnstable. I'm a former resident and on the Recreation Commission at one point in time. I'm here as the owner of Cape Cod Learning Tours, a hands-on science and nature educational and tour company. And I am hoping that you guys may consider allowing my company to use the halfway house on Sandy Neck. I approached the town manager, the Sandy Neck manager, and asked about this last year, and was told that we weren't allowed to because we are not a nonprofit. I am a for-profit enterprise. I put a description of what we'd like to do in the document so you can look at it at your leisure. But basically, what I'd like to do is to kind of improve the building a little bit, open it on Saturdays for people that are hiking or people that are camping, so that I can better educate a lot of visitors and locals about how unique and amazing and impressive our ecology and geology is, so that perhaps they'll take better care of it. I would be willing to work with Take Care Cape Cod on their trash campaign, things like that. Like to put up some educational materials in there about how dunes are formed, about the glaciation of Cape Cod, all that kind of stuff that helps people understand how important and ecologically sensitive Cape Cod is, so they have a better appreciation, a better understanding, and everybody becomes better stewards. So, thank you. Can I give this to you to give to everybody? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Avery.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Avery, did you sign in by any chance?
I did.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Susan Truitt. I'm from Osterville, too. And I am thrilled about the notion that you're going to have a big public meeting. I think that is, I think it's long overdue. Sorry it took so long to get here. But there's another really important event in October, which is the League of Women Voters Forum. So, announce quickly that you will not do it on October 24th, when the forum has already been announced on that date. Thank you.
What time is the forum? What time is the forum?
I don't know, but nobody wants to do both of those important things on the same.
On one day? Because it is in the morning.
It's long and extensive and hard work for everybody.
Okay.
They shouldn't be on the same day. But, in fact, you cannot be on the forum if you are in a contested race and the other person won't participate. So it's really important in the contested races to know in advance that they don't have a conflict of interest. How do I know that? I was told it by the League of Women Voters, that if there is a contested race and one candidate can't come or doesn't come, so we need to settle the issue that it won't conflict with your, they're both enormously important to the public.
Thank you.
Are you going to do it? What day, the 24th?
Anybody else in the room like to speak during public comment? Anybody via Zoom, please, Director Poyant.
Thank you. Yes, we have 4 people from on Zoom. The first is Roberta Mock. Roberta, you may unmute. You have 3 minutes. Three minutes.
Sorry about that. Hi, I hope everyone's doing well tonight. I had a couple of things that are bothering me. It's taken a while for it to really sit in about the 307 Main Street. Used to be Cape Cod Bank and Trust. Fond memories. I used to work at that bank. That building, I think, would be better served to be either a cultural center, something educational, or a new spot for our town library for Hyannis, for the village. Because our library that we have right now is pretty small, and it'd be a great location to make it for the town, something that serves the town. I think that putting this development, and I may be too late in saying this, I just want to put it out there, I think we're making a huge mistake in putting a high rise of apartments there. It's going to change the whole character of downtown. I'd like to see it be more usable for the arts, education, science, anything but what is proposed. I'm sorry. I just had to get that in there. I noticed that something else has been concerning me, and it may be my lack of knowledge. It seems to me there's a lot of realtors that somehow end up involved in either council or, for example, Hyannis Main Street Waterfront District. I understand we have another realtor who's being appointed. It makes me feel uncomfortable because it's very fine line of a conflict of interest, and I'm not talking about the kind that is for financial gain. It's just very difficult to monitor. I'd like to see more public, a better cross section of people involved in the town, and less realtors. I think there's a bit of a conflict of interest that can happen that's kind of under the wire in that, and I just had to say that. Going back to the whole Avangrid thing, such a nightmare. I drive over that little bridge, the Centerville River, every day when I go to work. And, you know, I used to come home seeing the kids jumping off the bridge. And I know they're not supposed to, but it's so iconic, Cape Cod. That terrifies me that what they want to do to this area of run those cables under there, and there is an impact. I forget what it's called, an electrical current that it does affect. And I've been doing a little bit more reading on there. There's so much, and the cost, the exorbitant cost to our electric bill. This is not going to be a cheap transition for
I'm sorry, Ms. Mock,
many
we're
of
at
us who
3
are
minutes now.
close to
You wanna finish
retirement,
up?
living on a fixed budget, are not going to be able to afford the electricity bills that are going to be thrown at us. And I don't know how we're going to deal with that.
Ms. Mock, you're at
Those
3
are things
minutes,
that are on my
20
mind.
seconds
Thank you.
now.
Thank you, Ms. Mock.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Is
Are-
there any?
Our next speaker is Greg Gertie. Greg, you have 3 minutes. You may unmute.
Meine Arbeit als ob du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin.
What's that? Okay. We wanted you to rescind the Park City Wind host agreement because it is a hypothetical project which does not have. Hello? Somebody breaking in?
Please continue, Mr. Gertie.
Okay, let me start again. We want you to rescind the Park City Wind host agreement because it is a hypothetical project which does not have any money for funding and does not have a contract. We read today that Avangrid has a bankruptcy possibility in the next 2 years. It is not a good business decision to continue with working with such a company. That's it. Thank you.
Is that it, Mr. Gertie? Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else? Director Boyan.
I'm waiting for confirmation on the other two. No, that is all we have.
Okay, thank you. So appreciate everybody's participation and public comment. Oh, yep, sir.
You guys, time now.
Hey,
You guys, Asia Graves, you guys know my spiel. I'm going to be here at every town council meeting discussing the need for affordable housing. We don't have workforce housing for people making between $41,500 and $55,000 for one person. There is none in our town of Barnstable. I know that we consider this a village, but we don't have any at all in Barnstable. So what that's saying is we don't have workforce housing whatsoever. We need the housing for the existing workforce that is here. We also have an immigration crisis that's going around the country with the population here. We're going to need to build now. So I'm speaking out in support of the project at 307 Main Street. That project is going to go to people that actually need housing, particularly locals, who are probably living with family members and friends right now and actually need a place to call their own. Most of the people in their 30s don't want to live with their parents. Trust me, I've done it. Not the most fun thing in the world. So if we can get these projects passed, people like me, millennials and Gen Z, who do want to live in walk-lived cities, my generation will be able to move out of their parents' houses and grandparents' houses and live alone. So let's get some housing built. I also do want in a public forum say, Councilwoman Lutke, I do find it disrespectful that you told me to go to lunch with Stu Bernstein when you know that I'm a person who needs housing. I felt that was kind of passive-aggressive and a slap in the face to attack me on next door, by the way. So I did want to say that publicly. Anyways, done.
Just for future reference, directing a counselor directly, you can ask a question, but accusatory sometimes. It's okay. No, it's okay. Thank you. Yeah. You can direct it towards me even. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Appreciate, again, everybody's participation in public comment, and now it's time for response to public comment. So looking to my left, would anybody like to respond to public comment? Okay, just making sure. Anybody else? Councilor Lucky, please.
Thank you, President Levesque. I'd like to speak to everyone who spoke tonight. Bob Schulte, thank you for what you've done. Congratulations on meeting with the town leadership and getting together to come up with a form for that. And I'll tie that together with Susan. Your comment is very well taken. I know earlier in the year, again, back to Bob Schulte, they had a conflict, I think, with a Conservation Commission and a Centerville local meeting. And we ought to do everything we can to avoid those conflicts when we know we have people who need to be at both of those. I know at the League of Women Voters, I've gone to their events before. They're fantastic. And certainly, I think Bob Schulte has said that he wanted the town councilors at the forum, and so how can they be in two places at the same time? So thank you, Susan, for speaking up. Calendar deconfliction is always difficult, especially when we have so many things going on. So thank you for that. Hector, thank you. I always respect your voice. I know, Paul, I always come in on the financial, the advisory council that you're on, and I think it's a great point. I hope our legal team does look at that. The agreements could be perhaps renegotiated since we're at a stopping point, but it needs to be definitely studied, so it's a great thing. And as you mentioned, there may be more discussion later on the agenda when those come up, but a beautiful point and very well laid out. Your financial background is unmatched, and I really appreciate the way you laid it out very clearly in terms of how the payments are, and it seems like we could do something better there. Jeff, certainly that needs to be looked at, again, to the legal department, but I love what you're doing. There's always opportunities to do waivers and things. It sounds like you have a great program. I love your vision. Always education and stewardship of our environment is tremendous. Roberta always speaks with passion. She's lived here a long time. I have reached out to the developer of 307 Main and perhaps suggested some ways that they might incorporate the town in there. Even though it is a strictly residential development, there may be some opportunities. I suggested some things to them about how they could reach out to the community by doing some certain design features. We'll see if they take any of that under advisement, because you can perhaps do both. If you're a little bit visionary and you have some creative aspects to your design, they have opportunities because their first floor is essentially a parking garage, and the rest of it is amenity space for the apartments. So instead of just having a shield to the garage, that space could engage with the sidewalk. And again, I gave them some suggestions and some things definitively to look at, other examples from, frankly, around the world. So we'll see what they come up with. Hopefully they will be creative in that. And so that would address some of Roberta's, because again, I hate to lose public engagement on Main Street. It's so important. And we already have with the schools, certainly during the school day, there's engagement, but on the weekends, not so much. So we need to engage the sidewalk. That's what keeps it vibrant. Greg, it sounds like you and Hector, similar thinking that this is a time to maybe expand and look at some broader things that we could do other than those that are on the agenda tonight. Asia, always a good voice. I agree with you on 307 Main. That's why I have reached out to the developer. The affordability component there is unmatched from anything I think we've seen built in Barnstable. I'm very impressed with Wynn. And as to your comment directed at me, yes, inappropriate, but that's okay. And I was sincere. I think discussions between all people at all levels are always good. And it was on Nextdoor, and I know I've spoken here before. I meet people where they are on Nextdoor. Some people don't like doing that because you end up in these situations. But you were commenting a lot on the proposal for the dockside, and I seriously thought, because you are new to the community, that you could perhaps go to lunch to Mr. Bornstein, because he is a very large developer, has a lot of housing units, And he might appreciate. I was sincere in that, and if you took it a different way, then I certainly apologize, because that wasn't my intention. And again, I always like public comment of any kind, and I appreciate your thoughts on that. So thank you.
Anybody else like to speak to this side, response to public comment? Councilor Schnapp, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, thank you for all who came out to comment tonight. I just wanted to reiterate or emphasize the desire not to conflict with a lot of campaign forums that are being scheduled for the latter half of October. So it'd be a bit of a challenge to find that perfect time. And I don't know if a Saturday is actually preferable to an evening. So I don't know what discussions have occurred, but I agree that, you know, it's important for our democracy to have every opportunity to hear the candidates, and that shouldn't conflict with any large discussion that we want to have with the public. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Schnapp. Councilor Clark, anything? Madam Vice Chair? Okay, anybody to the left, going back here? Okay, it's like looking to both ways and then to the left again. So, before I cross the road. So I just want to thank everybody for coming. You know, there's a lot of discussion I see in the community about 307 Main Street. And truth be known, when we passed form-based code, what the Wynn property, what they are doing is, honestly, what they're doing is by right. So they have the right, because we passed the zoning that we passed, to go 4 stories. To have the parking situation that they have. A lot of it still comes into question, but to be honest with you, right now it's in front of the Hyannis Historic Waterfront Commission, so Main Street Waterfront Commission. And really what their purview, and this is just important for the public to understand, is that their purview is, 1, is the building historic, 2, is the design of a maritime Cape Cod historic feel. And that is the extent and 4 corners of what their discussion is. So I think it's important to know that this is not up to debate at the council level at this point in time of what that project should be. It's up to the commission just to decide that is the design historic and is the building historic. The building is not historic. They've determined that, and they're discussing design. So I think it's important to know, and yes, when we passed form-based code, the Wynn company that's proposing is the type of cast of characters that we were hoping to deal with and to be able to have come here to Barnstable and possibly partner with us in building and redeveloping blighted and underdeveloped properties. And that is what this situation is. It does have a great level and different levels of affordability, which will benefit many classes of people, and I find that also encouraging as well, because again, that was the point of this, so that and that gives a company some predictability of what they could do, so they can get financing. So I just want to educate people on what this is. It's not an aggressive move to try to overdevelop Hyannis. That's not what it was. It was we are in the midst of a housing crisis, that is true. We have polled businesses on Cape Cod, and they have an understanding that to have their business thrive, as the landing is being developed over at the Kmart shopping plaza, and that being a possible threat economically to downtown Hyannis, we need to move forward and develop Hyannis so that we do not have blighted properties just sitting there undeveloped while redevelopment is happening in the town. It has to happen in parallel to each other. And again, if we can provide people a home at the same time while also increasing growth and tax dollar revenue, it's all beneficial. And no pun intended, it becomes a win-win. Are there challenges that could happen because of it? Yes, there is, but it's better than doing nothing. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody's input. I just want to bring a perspective on what the council was trying to accomplish, what the planning department was trying to accomplish, and again, I think it's something that they worked very hard on, the planning department, and the staff should be very proud of moving forward. So I think that's any follow-up on that. I appreciate everybody's response to public comment as well. And with that,
I actually have a question.
Yes, sure.
Is form-based code somewhere on our website where the public can access it and get a better idea?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's just it really is it's our specific form-based code. Form-based code can take on a lot of different variations, but our specific form-based code is on our website.
Our
yes.
specific ordinance is
Under planning and development.
Under planning and development, thank you.
Great question, thank you. Please, Councilor Mendes, please.
Just one quick comment about various projects going on in town. Me being from here several generations, I don't necessarily like it, but it's a need. And people have to realize that 50% of the people that work on the Cape every day come from off Cape. So what that means is that not only do we not have places for workers, but their paychecks aren't being spent here. So we're paying them, but not reaping the benefits from that. I was on a job site in Osterville 3 days ago. I was the only contractor on that job site from Op Cape out of about 20 people. Just my company, the only one. So what we're doing now isn't sustainable, period. And they wonder why to get a CNA in somebody's house is $75 an hour. It's because it costs them $30 a day to drive here. So we have to do something. And sitting on our hands isn't going to do it. We're biting our nose to spite our face. So something has to be done. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Like I said, I would love to have open space all over the Cape. I used to ride my motorcycle from my house in Marston's Mills to Howard on the power lines. It pains me to see what's going on. But what we're doing now just isn't sustainable. And if we come together, we can do it sensibly. But again, what we're doing now just isn't sustainable. That's all.
Thank you, Council Mendes. Okay, so we'll close response to public comment. Again, thank you, everybody. And we'll move on to Town Manager Communications. The Town Manager's report has been pre-recorded and is available to Town Council and the public. The report will be prepared in written form and posted on the Town Manager's website as in the past. The Town Manager and staff will be available to answer any questions regarding the report as presented. The Town Manager's communications for the period of August 22nd through October 5th, 2023 included an update on 1. The update on Budget Action Calendar, 2. Update on Local Comprehensive Planning Committee, 3. Update on filing of a watershed permit resulting from the July 7, 2023 changes to Title V and watershed permit regulations. 4. Response to questions regarding need for sewer expansion. 5. Information on the town's water resource management efforts. 6. Update on discussions with Mass DEP regarding PFAS contamination. 7. Announcement of Fall Walking Weekend by Open Space Committee. And 8. Update on offshore wind projects. So this is the Town Manager's report. Those are the bullet points. Those, again, has been recorded, can be watched on the Barnstable television station. And now I would open up the floor to any questions for the Town Manager and or staff. Looking to my right, Councilor Lutke, please.
Yes, thank you, President Levesque. I had a question on item 5, because that's come up quite a bit. And I know previously the position of the town was always that we really can't do anything because we're under the permit, to do any more intense treatment of our effluent. I just want just a little bit more information on why we're doing this now and what we're trying to achieve. What's the purpose of doing this now and not 10 years ago, that kind of thing? What is the impetus now and the goal of this? And kind of part of that was, I'd always heard at the end of the build out of the sewer system that we'd have another point for effluent release. Is this going to take the place of that? Or I just a little bit more on why we're doing this now.
Thank you, Mark Ells, Town Manager. Good evening, everyone. I'm still pausing at your initial question statement. So I'll just try to answer everything you've just asked with what I'm going to say. Treatment plant in Hyannis has a groundwater discharge permit. So that lays out the regulatory targets for that facility to remain compliant with, Mass DEP regulation relevant to a groundwater discharge permit. We have always, I started in Public Works as the environmental engineer for the town. We have always exceeded what we were required to do from a regulatory standpoint. So it's the opposite of what you said. We have always tried to, for example, nitrogen removal is 10 parts per million by permit. We've been at 6 for a long time, and now we're trying to move to 3. We're way beyond state regulation in looking at things like emerging contaminants because we know that they are there and we know that they are going to be regulated. And therefore, as you plan for an asset that, in the case of a treatment plant, you're thinking 50 years out, but you're implementing today. We're trying to make sure that we are studying every opportunity and available technology, knowing that we live on top of the water we drink, and everything that every household does impacts that water, and our treatment plant is simply a conduit through which that water flows. When it comes out of our facility, we want it to be as clean as it can possibly be. That's why we're doing what we're doing. I think what Public Works is doing is going to get national recognition. I don't think this technology is even implemented anywhere on the East Coast. You see it if you're an astronaut, if you're in the Navy, you've seen recycling of wastewaters. Primarily, they don't do it, I think, because of the costs. But we're not like other places. Again, if you live in Boston, you get water 120 miles to the west. They don't live on top of the water they drink, and they don't use products that in even trace amounts can contaminate water supplies. So that's a quick answer. I think Public Works has been working on this for 30 years, and this is another version of advancing that effort.
Will this impact our permit or no? After this is...
Will it impact our permit?
Our permit or no?
Well, it exceeds our permit. So what
Right.
we begin to do in working with the regulators is to say, now that we've proven a technology can consistently deliver a particular permit level, is there a reason to modify it, or do we just exceed it and you still hold? Because it just isn't us. We're looking at the environment in which we discharge both, the political, regulatory, and environmental situation. So that's a discussion that Public Works has embarked on with DEP. I certainly fully support it. And I do expect, though, and it's really important that we start to talk about this, when we, and I've been saying this in my communications now for a long time, when we're treating the water down to a level that it's cleaner than the groundwater, we have to have a serious conversation, because why would we put that back in the ground? We're at that point of planning. Hopefully, we'll get it to that point of delivering a water from that treatment plant that is usable for many purposes.
All right, and then the final thing, the emerging contaminants you mentioned?
Yes.
Is that a known list, or if they're emerging, is it something you're just exploring technologies to capture?
We are. It's categorized in a CEC, contaminants of emerging concern.
Okay.
So there's many ways in general that you can remove these. But, Public Works, and certainly we talk a lot about PFOS and all of those groups of chemicals that surround that, PFOS, PFOA. Public Works is looking at all of it because we know this is going to confront us in the coming decades. Are there lists? Yeah, you can go onto EPA. You can look at where they have advisories. I think that many of the chemicals that are used, I think it's important for the public to know what I've been saying in my town manager communications, which is that and I'll stop after this because I don't want to go too far afield here. But I think it's important for the public to know that, yes, we have point sources. And Director Santos is working with them and did so very recently. I noted it in my report. It was a technical meeting, though. It wasn't a, it wasn't a meeting where all sorts of groups would come together. This was just regulators and us and the interested parties talking about how they're going to technically proceed. There'll be other meetings, and there are other meetings that get scheduled, and certainly the public are welcome to that. But I think that it's important for the public to know that we have point sources. For the most part, we know what two of the most significant ones are that are impacting our wells. The difference now is that we have non-point sources. Every single one of our septic systems that doesn't remove emerging contaminants is a concern to our drinking water. And I say this a lot, but in my lifetime, parts per thousand were a big thing when I was in college. And then parts per million was like high tech to be able to have devices that would treat down to that level. We're talking about parts per trillion now. This is you with a little drop coming out of your house, going into the ground, and able to contaminate a water supply. Whether you use Teflon pans, whether you use makeups that contain these chemicals, whether you use microwavable popcorn, I can keep going and going, but you can look it up. You can look up what EPA advises. You can look up all the emerging contaminants that we should be concerned with. Right now, we're very concerned with PFOA group. But there's far more. I want to say I've seen a list, Dan can correct me, around heading toward 1,000. And these are stuff we use every day. So it's not just the big point source. It's every single one of us and what we do. So that's what Public Works and that's what your town is preparing to manage. Because they come to us. They don't say at their sink, well, I'm not going to do this. They continue to do it, and then they target the well or the public water supply well or the effluent discharge from a treatment plant. But we're just a pipe. We're the conduit through which the people who live here in Barnstable or on Cape Cod do on that land. So we got to educate them. The best way to stop this is to prevent it. So, sorry, long answer, but
No, that's terrific, Mark. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, more to come.
Thank you, Town Manager Ells. Anybody else? Council Cusack, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Town Manager Ells, one thing you just mentioned there on item number 5 was that this could be used for many purposes. And I don't want to jump the gun, but maybe you could characterize in the future what some of those purposes might possibly be.
Well, we have a challenge. I mean, a lot of places will go right to like irrigation, okay? But we have too much of the year. It does coincide with our peak flow season, so maybe there's some opportunities there. But when that's more typical effluent, not to the level that we're looking to be able to treat this. So you really do get into the discussion about potable and non-potable reuse. And that's going to be interesting for our public to even think about, quite honestly. And it's different. I bring up the 2 examples that I did because you have no choice if you're somewhere where you can't access clean water and you have to recycle the water you have. I think in the next decade, we'll probably be doing that here. And I think the challenges of what I've said, which is we live on top of the water we drink, and it's not just a point source, but the non-point sources that are detectable and problematic are going to drive us to this. So that's what I see the discussion that will be coming forward. And it's not just us. Again, we're just leading it. We're going to be talking across the Cape, certainly, and beyond. So.
Follow-up?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you. That's fantastic. I really like the direction of this conversation. I just, not really questions, but I appreciate in item number 4 that your clarification that there are no plans to modify land use or zoning in the villages of Osterville or Centerville. I think some folks possibly might in our communities see the sewer as a Trojan horse of sorts to force greater density on some of the villages. And so I appreciate that you effectively have clarified that in item number 4 tonight. And then I also want to just say thanks for mentioning the open space walking tours this weekend. I'm personally going to be participating in the BLT's readathon of Thoreau's Cape Cod on Saturday. So hope to see some folks out there for that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Clark brought that up with me right away. So, yeah, that's going to be a great event for people.
Just want to make note that Councilor Neary has joined us here on the dais. Thank you. Councilor Clark, please.
Yes, thank you very much, President Levesque, and thank you, Town Manager Els. If I may just piggyback on what Councilor Lutke was referring to about the emerging contaminants that the town does host and helps to fund 4 hazardous waste collection days in the town of Barnstable, which is completed for the year of 2023. And the collection of discarded medicines or unwanted medicines can be left at the Barnstable Police Department and I believe Cape Cod Hospital. So those are ways that the citizenry can keep the emerging contaminants from getting into our waste stream. Just adding to that.
Thank you, and yes, I think a very aggressive educational program too is coming quickly. Yes.
Thank you, Councilor Clark. Councilor Schnapp, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mark. Definitely a lot about water in this report. Obviously, incredibly important for our town and everybody here. I have a couple, I'm going to actually say requests for information that could probably be brought at a next town council meeting during your report. One would be an update on our short-term rental activity. I don't know if we have any funding from DOR yet. That usually probably is a little bit later in the month or November, but then also any updates that we've usually gotten from our host compliance system.
Yep.
And regarding number 6, with the discussion of the contamination at the airport from the 2 sources, the Fire Academy and the Gateway Airport, could we have some type of quick analysis on the amount of funding in total that we've had to spend on that remediation and any revenue to date that we have collected either from the county or from any lawsuits or any other source that would go toward that expense?
Next meeting, you wanted that, right? Yeah.
And the third item, and maybe I could get a little report today, is I've brought up in the past about our progress with the opioid settlement funds, and I didn't know if Mr. Milne or yourself has any update on our progress with convening
I don't know if Mark has
forums or-
anything additional, but if he does, is anything additional?
Good evening, Councilors. Mark Milne, Director of Finance. Thank you for your question. Yes, we have been working on an RFP to engage a consultant to assist us with a public engagement process because it's strongly suggested by the state that we engage the public to determine the best use of these funds. And so we have developed a request for proposals. We've also met with the entity by the name of JSI, which the state has hired to provide assistance for communities, and we met with them to talk about any potential assistance that they could provide us in the form of developing and implementing a public engagement process, and yet they are not staffed to do that, unfortunately. But we reached out to them to see if they could potentially help us, so that's where we're at. We did receive 2 proposals so far. We're waiting for a third one.
Is that in response to an RFP?
In response to an RFP, yes. Yes.
Because I thought you said you were still developing the RFP for the consultant.
We got 2 proposals initially. They were just requests for quotes.
Okay.
And then after looking at what they were suggesting, we decided we need a more fleshed out, fully developed RFP.
And what is the time frame you're envisioning when you hire a consultant to complete this engagement
Yeah,
process?
I think we're looking at November to get the process started with meetings taking place during the winter and coming forward sometime late spring with suggestions for the council's consideration for appropriation, because they are subject to council appropriation.
Okay. I would urge perhaps an acceleration of that timeframe. We received the first tranche of money a year ago. The opioid crisis and the effects on our population are not going away. There are providers in our community who can have tools to assist, and I value the community input, but it's taking us a long time to get it. And so I don't want to shortchange the community input at all, but I want to make sure that our process to engage a consultant and get it underway does not take any more time than it needs to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Schnapp. Anybody else? Councilor Hatzelus, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mark, a couple things for you. Thank you for clarifying number 4. Councilor Cusack already addressed it, but I would just encourage those in the public who have questions about zoning and the wastewater management and how it's going to affect your particular village center, that you go to the source for the accurate information, because as is stated here and as we've all experienced here up on the dais, there is a lot of misinformation being put out there, whether it's just for lack of knowledge or knowing where to go to get the information or other reasons. I think it's important that folks read your report, and also in that same vein, item number 8, where you give a summary of the 3 wind projects. I know you've talked about it we've talked about town council meetings in the last at least almost 3 years I've been here, at various civic association meetings. You've explained what the host community agreement is and what it isn't. If I can just ask you for another summary here, so that those who might be watching or those who might watch this on when it's recorded can also hear it, because not everyone's going to read, unfortunately, what you put here. So thank you.
And thank you for the question. Mark Ellis, Town Manager. So a host community agreement isn't a regulatory requirement, nor is it a regulatory document. It really is an agreement for us to host a particular event, thing, project. In this case, it's a cable landing, and then a cable that traverses the roads of Barnstable that tie into a substation, or in this case, substations with multiple projects. The focus of the host community agreement is to identify and try to include, above and beyond what would be required by the regulators, what Barnstable would like to receive if the project proceeds. Now, I'll back up a little bit, because, I mean, right now, especially with what's going on with the PPAs, it's easy for this to be lost in kind of the evolution of the project, because, I mean, the host community, well, first of all, back up. Federal government awarded a grant area off the southeast side of Martha's Vineyard to a proponent. We had nothing to do with that. They awarded it. The proponent moved forward bidding on power purchase agreements, okay? They were awarded to those proponents. That's, in this case, Avangrid, and it's the predecessor that, I think the 2 companies involved in the Vineyard Wind. It was originally one project that got split into 2 with Vineyard Wind. It was Vineyard Wind. After review and permitting, it got split into Vineyard Wind and Park City Wind. So we were entering into this process with a federal award of a grant area, with signed, agreed to power purchase agreements, and that the proponent was proceeding with permitting at the federal and state level. What the host community agreement does is it positions us to ask for more than whatever the regulators would allow. In our case, the number one priority for us that nobody talks about, interestingly, was that no other company could interconnect to that cable coming in through the Sound and landing. Back then it was Yarmouth with us as the alternative site at Covell's Beach. No regulators were saying that we can't, that couldn't be done. And we just had come off of, over a decade of fighting Cape Wind, which was putting wind turbines much closer to the shoreline. So going into the host agreement, the primary focus initially was that. It wasn't a singular, though. It was so that interconnection can't occur. That's in it. It was to make sure, given our sensitivity of our water resources, that when they put in a project, it either doesn't contain or minimizes the various chemicals that they may use that could impact our sensitive resource, our water resource. Now, just to put it into context, and thank you, our legal department and Charlie McLaughlin, I think we were one of the first locations, if not the first, in Massachusetts to work with, that's a positive word, to work with utility companies so that we could look for restrictions on this above and beyond what the regulators required. That had nothing to do with these wind projects. That had to do with a transformer at the airport. And we successfully argued that, and that was incorporated. Meaning every time you drive by a telephone pole and you see those big containers on them, many of them contain dielectric fluid. We've talked about emerging contaminants. I mean, this is everywhere, okay? This isn't unique to us. When those leak, they age, sometimes damage occurs, that gets into the environment. So our concern with any substation, with any expansion of existing substations or new ones, was that we have as advanced a technology there as possible. That's in the host agreement. That's not required by the regulators. Utility companies can go out and do it the way they've been doing it. Still, our host community agreement goes above and beyond, okay? We brought in a third-party expert there, and they helped us to identify how we might do that. Now, obviously, if it wasn't there at all, that would be a different scenario. But they were proceeding with their permitting to do the project, and the approval of that primarily falls not with us, but other agencies, though we do have controls. Another major asset or aspect of it was to coordinate road construction projects with this construction if it occurred, and our primary road construction project was sewer installation. So DPW kind of had to retool everything because they had laid out their sewer expansion plan over 30 years to look at where these proposals would come and what the advantages might be to us to, number one, do it all one place, one time, and then have them restore the roadways. And in the case where we had more than just asphalt and you know, the normal associated with a roadway, like a streetscape, like on a main street, that they would have to restore that as well, and that would be their cost, okay? That was another, that's above and beyond what's required by any regulator. We looked at a fee. We looked at a dollar amount that would be put in that contract. Now remember, the initial PPAs, which were awarded, they were down around 8 cents, less than 8 cents. they were extremely, now we're talking about, and I don't disagree with what some of the speakers have said, which is, it seems a little bit unfair that now they get to go back and renegotiate that price, and we don't get to go back and renegotiate the fee. Okay, but legal has taken that under advisement, and we've been looking at that since the first, inclination that they may terminate a PPA. And we're still looking at progressing with that. But we negotiated a host community agreement. Now, I don't know what assumptions were made in earlier statements, but we're up in the first 2 years close to 2 million. We're not seeing it progress the way it was described. There is an equation in the host community agreement that takes into account both the personal property tax and the host community agreement payments. Because we were pretty much at originally a much lesser dollar amount. And we came up, well, what we were looking to do, and just another note, the town council has voted on the first project. This is another point of confusion with a lot of people. They think, well, it's all going to sewer. It isn't. That first $16 million goes 100% to water and water capital, water expenses, okay? And that was voted by the town council. But we were looking at over what term might we borrow money. Therefore, if we asked for more than what they were willing to give, might they consider some sort of an incremental payment when we also look at the personal property tax. Now, the range of the personal property tax that was estimated at that time for actually both the first two projects, Vineyard Wind and Park City Wind, was between $800,000 and $1.2 million a year. To be determined once project complete, asset valued, and we assess that. So that's not everything, but those are the highlights. That's what's in a host community agreement. Sorry for the long explanation, but I get a lot of comments on this from people, and they just really don't understand what that host community agreement is. This was also all initiated, certainly by our town council, to look at this at the time, and we were very much looking at the revenue side, the environmental protection side. Those were all things that as we saw this evolve, as we saw the primary landing go from Yarmouth to Barnstable, that were in consideration. So that's where we're here today. A little bit different landscape now we're managing, but we're fully aware of the challenges that these terminations of these PPAs present to us. I think the latter project, the Commonwealth Wind, little clearer path than the Park City Wind project.
Yeah. Well, thank you for clarifying that. I just know that if any of us were trying to start building a house and do survey work without permits, we wouldn't be allowed to do it. So I'm hoping that we can, get this done and stop any more work from being done. I think we had a productive meeting today, this morning, and I think we're all on the same page of what we want to get out of this thing. And it is true, the landscape has changed in the last 3 years, but at the same time, it's important for people to know that host community agreement, it's not a permitting document. It's not even required. It's not as if the town said, okay, you can go ahead and do this, and here's the host community agreement that allows you to do it. Oh, by the way, we'll take $16 million for it. It's not as simple as that. So I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Atzelis. I do have a question in regards, not a question, it's actually, I know the answer to the question, but I think it's important to state it in regards to the DEIR point number 8 in the comments in regards to Commonwealth Wind, and maybe just, and something that we've talked about a number of times, and without having to read all 7 pages, just what is the town's stance in regards to Commonwealth Wind?
I think one sentence in that what the document you're referring to kind of summarizes it. And at this time, given what we've seen in the draft EIR, we do not support the project moving forward. So that's what was stated to the Secretary of Environmental Affairs.
in regards to the Commonwealth Wind project.
That's correct.
Thank you. That's for the benefit of some of the people in the room. I know that would concern them, so.
Mr. President,
Yes.
could someone words for the acronym DEIR?
Oh, sure, I can do it right now.
Draft
actually.
environmental impact report. So we commented on the environmental notification form, which lays out, it identifies categorically why they would have to go to the Mass Environmental, under the Mass Environmental Protection Act, why they would have to go to that agency and file environmental documents. And then it becomes like a clearinghouse for comments from everything from other state agencies right down to an individual, and it all matters. That's why I keep telling people, even though they want us to make the comments, which is great, but every comment matters. So the ENF was put in. Then they do, the next step was determined that an environmental impact report is required. So the first step in that is a draft environmental impact report. And so what they did was, given the comments that we made, and the town gave a fairly extensive set of comments, they're fairly broad though, for more information, and then they put forward this draft environmental information report. I think in review of that document, it really didn't answer a lot of our questions. It more reinforced where they wanted to go with the project, and we felt as though that is not sufficient at this time. And in general, we also got into specifics, and I've given it to, I believe the council leadership has it, and I know a couple of councilors, at their request, I've sent it to, but certainly it's a public document, and it can be shared with all. Now, what will happen is they being the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs, will take this under review, will issue a certificate unless there's another extension to this. The certificate then will be the direction as to what the final EIR will be, not the draft. The D is the draft, the final EIR is the final document. And that will lay out how they're going to address all the various concerns that have been identified, or not. And the Secretary can still issue a certificate. So we did not receive all of the information that we were hoping to see in that document, and therefore we responded the way we did. And it was under my direction. Now, our legal department sent it, but that's where it landed. Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Schnapp. Councilor Clark, please.
Thank you very much, President Levesque. And if I may, Town Manager Els, is the response to the draft environmental impact, what does that R stand for? Review.
Report, yeah.
Report. The deadline was the 6th, and did you tell me that it has been extended?
No, no. It was, I think it was the 29th, and it got moved to the 3rd.
Okay.
So the comment period is
over.
If I'm right. I think I think it was Tuesday.
Thank you.
Yeah. Am I right or wrong? Okay, thank you. Sorry. Try to remember it all.
Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it.
Yes.
And appreciate the staff's work on that. I did read it, and it's very thorough and again, timely. So any other questions, comments in regards to the town manager's report? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you very much. Appreciate that and the explanation. And it never gets boring talking about PFAS. That all being said, it is 8:10. Actually, let's do this first. Let's act on the minutes.
I make a motion to accept the minutes from September 21st, 2023 as written.
Second.
You know, first and a second. Is there any discussion in regards to the minutes? Okay, not seeing any. Please signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. Is there any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. And also, let's do item number 8, communications from elected officials, boards, committees, staff, commission reports, correspondence, and announcements. Any announcements looking to my left? Any announcements looking to my right?
Thank you very much
Yes,
again.
you're very welcome. I'm looking forward to this announcement.
Yes, I know the Fall Walking Weekend has been sponsored or spearheaded by the volunteers that serve on what used to be the Land Acquisition and Preservation Committee and is now the Open Space Committee. You'll find the brochure in the news section, and I appreciate the work that the town manager put it in his report, that the communication director, Lynn Poyan, has made it prominent on the town's website, and the brochure is also on the Open Space Committee web page, which is still labeled the Land Acquisition and Preservation Committee, which I understand. And I want to thank the Open Space Committee's administrative assistant, Jenna Zeno, who designed our lovely brochure. So there's a lot of options that run from tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock at the Santuit Preserve right through till Monday. There are options for people to go and enjoy explore our open spaces and trails in the town of Barnstable. And in regards to the one tomorrow morning at the Santuit Preserve Bog, which is co-managed by the town of Barnstable and Mashpee. Thank you. And it's all this is free, with contact information in the brochure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Clark. Councilor Schnepp, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just would like to highlight two items that were in the town manager's report. The CFAC has completed its 12-page report. It's just chock full of information, and I want to thank the committee for once again putting together a very professional report. Not only is it available online, but many of the members have distributed these reports throughout the community. I think all our libraries should have a copy. So if you prefer the hard copy, please find one near you. The other item I wanted to bring up is the local comprehensive planning committee is looking for new members to represent the diversity in our community. The original deadline for applications was going to be tomorrow, but that's been extended to next Friday. I believe that announcements or flyers have gone out in backpacks for the schools. So parents, if you're listening, please make sure you unpack your child's backpack and look at those flyers. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Schnepp. Any other announcements? Okay. We'll close that part. Item number 8. And before we go in the orders of the day, it's 8:15. I'd say we take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back in. And just so everybody knows, I am taking the resolves out of order because I know there's a number of people, so we'll do those first before we do anything else, okay? Thank you very much. We'll be right back. I'd like to welcome everybody back to the Barnstable Town Council meeting here. It is just about 8:25, and we are taking a couple items out of order of new business. And Madam Vice President, if you could please, item number 2024-047.
Yes, item 2024-047, resolve revoking the authorization for the town manager to commence negotiations with Commonwealth Wind for a new host community agreement as written.
Second.
First and a second, and we have Town Attorney Karen Nober here to help us with the rationale.
Thank you, President
Are
Levesque.
you going to give the rationale for both items, or just the one at a time?
I'm going to give both, but I can break them up.
Okay,
I can
great.
do one and then do the other one.
That'd be great, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, councilors. Karen Nober, Town Attorney. So there are two agenda items before you that relate to offshore wind. The first one is item number 2024-047, which relates to Commonwealth Wind. And in November of last year, the Town Council authorized the town manager to commence negotiations regarding a host community agreement with Commonwealth Wind. At that time, Commonwealth Wind had a power purchase agreement with the Massachusetts utilities. Commonwealth Wind has since defaulted on that agreement and paid a financial penalty for doing so. As a result, the state of Massachusetts is undertaking a new procurement process for an offshore wind developer. Commonwealth Wind is a bidder in that process, but they haven't been selected as that process is still ongoing. The circumstances have changed from what they were last year when the council authorized the commencement of negotiations, and they've changed as a result of actions taken by Commonwealth Wind. In recognition of those changed circumstances, this resolve would revoke the authorization for any negotiations by the town manager with Commonwealth Wind. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any councilors have, thank you for the rationale, any councilors have questions in regards to this? I think there haven't been any conversations going on in regards to, with Commonwealth Wind. I just thought it was important just to put it on paper that we're officially rescinding that authorization. So that's how that started. Councilor Repker just had her hand up as I was speaking, and then Councilor Lutke after that, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Karen, for that. So with this Commonwealth Wind defaulting and resolve, this is a resolve to commence negotiations for a new host community agreement.
To revoke that authorization.
To revoke it. So is this something that can be discussed in an open session?
This one can be.
This one
because
can
we
be.
don't have a host community agreement with them.
Okay, all right. But and I guess we're not taking them together, but maybe I'll speak to the next one. I'll hold my comment until the next one.
Sure. This first one is only in regards to the host community agreement authorization for Commonwealth Wind.
Right.
Correct.
It's authorization to negotiate a host community agreement, and the resolve is to revoke that authorization.
Just to take it off the table so that the community understands, you know, where we stand in regards to that.
And if I may, Mr. President, for the public, Commonwealth Wind had their sights on Dowses?
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's for the public's clarification.
Thank you for that. Councilor Lutke?
No, I just wanted to be clear, kind of what Jessica was saying, just to understand the legal term, a resolve to revoke. Wouldn't we just revoke? What is a resolve to revoke? Is that the legalistic term for this? It wouldn't be
Generally, when the council votes, you vote an order or you vote a resolve, which is a resolution. In this case, because this doesn't really rise to the level of a measure as defined by the charter, it would be a resolution. So it's a resolve.
Okay, that was my clarification. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Lutke. Anybody else? Okay, not seeing any. I would just move forward to, we're just going to vote on this item first. Okay, great. So it's just a majority vote. So councilors, if you could please signify your approval for this resolution by raising your hand and saying aye. I believe that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Next item, please, Councilor Steinhilber, item number 2024-048.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is item 2024-048. Resolve postponing the granting of certain easements to Park City Wind LLC as written.
Second.
First and a second. Town Attorney Karen Noba for the rationale, please.
Thank you, President Levesque. So this item, 2024-048, relates to Park City Wind. Unlike Commonwealth Wind, the town has a host community agreement with Park City Wind. When the town entered into that agreement, it did so in large part because Park City Wind had a power purchase agreement in place with the Connecticut utilities. However, there is nothing in the agreement itself that speaks to having a power purchasing agreement. And up until recently, Park City Wind had been in the process of renegotiating its power purchase agreement with the Connecticut utilities. However, they just informed us that those renegotiations were not successful, and they're pulling out of their Connecticut PPA. So we're going to need to see what the state of Connecticut does. We just learned this, in the last day or so. So we'll need to see what they do, but it seems likely they'll undertake a new bid process just like Massachusetts is doing. The host community agreement, the one that we have with Park City Wind, requires that the town grant certain easements, and the town council has voted to approve the granting of those easements. But the town manager has not yet actually granted them. The vote before you would direct the town manager to not grant those easements before the Energy Facilities Siting Board issues its decision and any appeal period has expired. So I think it's important to note the vote does not direct him to grant the easements after that decision is issued. It simply says he cannot grant them before that date. He cannot take any action to do that before that date. So what would happen as a practical matter is once the EFSB issues its decision, the legal department, my office, will review that decision. We'll also consider what the current circumstances are at that time surrounding the entire Park City Wind project, and then we'll make a recommendation to the council and to the town manager as to how to proceed. And you should be aware that in structuring the vote that is before you, we considered linking the granting of the easements to not just the EFSB decision, but to Park City Wind having a PPA in place. But we didn't include any reference to the PPA in the actual vote because the host community agreement does not actually require that Park City Wind have a PPA. So the agreement does require that Park City Wind obtain all necessary permits, the most important of which is the approval from the State Energy Facilities Siting Board. So based on that, our recommendation is that the town hold off on granting the easements while that EFSB decision is pending. Because we have an enforceable contract in place with Park City Wind, and that's what the host community agreement is, it's important that any actions taken by the town be in compliance with that agreement. And once again, when the EFSB does issue its decision, legal will review and advise on next steps at that time. There will not be any automatic granting of the easements at that time. So I'd be happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Attorney Nober. Any questions? Councilor Letke, please.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Because they have done, I guess, the same thing that Commonwealth perhaps is, if I'm saying this the right way, is that they've ceased their agreements, their power purchase agreements. Why wouldn't we cancel the host community agreement?
Well, you can't just cancel an agreement. So it's an enforceable contract between two parties. So typically, you would look to say, did the other party breach the agreement?
Okay.
They have not breached the agreement because there's nothing in the agreement about having a PPA. So then there are other potential considerations, I think, down the road and positions the town might take in looking to whether the contract might be voided. But I think at this time, it's premature. We don't know what Connecticut is going to do. I think there's more information that we need to have. And there's really, I think if we were to take steps to void the agreement, we would be inviting litigation. And there's no reason to do that today because we have a valid reason to put this on hold, which is the EFSB has not issued its decision yet. And so we might as well wait for that, see what that decision says, and then assess the situation and determine what the appropriate next steps are.
Okay, and then the second question, thank you, that clarifies that. And the second question about postponing the granting, we couldn't rescind we couldn't have a second consideration by the town council, or is that, again, that's too?
Well, I wouldn't rescind that authorization today, because again, they're not in breach of the agreement. But we're saying we're not going to convey easements, which are a property right, until the EFSB has actually issued its decision and they have the necessary permit and we know what the final route will be.
But is that, the Article 97 is not part of the other pieces? Isn't that a separate and distinct action that you could?
So Article 97, what that means is for us to grant one of those easements, because it involved beach property, for us to grant an easement that's protected by Article 97 of the amendments to the Constitution, you need legislative authorization. We got that legislative authorization. That authorization doesn't compel the town to do anything. It authorizes the town to do it. So we have the authority to grant that easement, but the state is not ordering us to do it. That's not what that legislation does.
Thank you. That really helps me with that authorization versus compelling. So we are holding our authorization. That's what this is about, and we can't be compelled. Or can the state compel?
Under the existing legislation, no. I think there are extreme steps that could potentially be taken by the state to compel an Article 97 action. I think it's sort of highly theoretical, but as a legal matter, I think it's possible. I think it's unlikely.
Okay. Thank you, Karen, and thank you, President Levesque. Thank you.
You're welcome. They're good questions, and it's a good explanation of what the process is, especially for the public that doesn't deal with Article 97 every day of the week. Councilor Repkasetti.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Councilor Lucky. My question was that, so if there was appetite for any kind of rescinding or revocation of the host community agreement, that would be done, or discussions would take place in executive session?
I think that would take place in executive session because that would necessarily lead to litigation.
Sure. Okay. All right. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Schnapp, please.
My fellow councilors have asked the questions I had, so thank you. But just as a timing issue, do we have any idea how long or when EFSB might make a decision? Is there any prediction there?
I don't know that. Charlie, no, we don't know that.
So we may not be coming back to this for months.
I really couldn't say.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Unfortunately, no definitive timeline. Anybody else? On this side, Councilor Atzelis. Okay, so appreciate that, and thank you for all your hard work on that. I also, this has been a topic of conversation. We, it obviously there's been a big outcry in the public in regards to the petition, and that's why I said in the last meeting, and that I've had concern about this for some time, and I asked, Town Manager Els about Article 97 specifically, mentioned to me that nothing has been signed as of yet, and I said, well, let's hold off on that until we get some sort of idea of if they're actually even going to have a power purchase agreement. So this had been in the works, and we just had to wait for the domino to fall, so to speak, before we could really act and put something on the agenda. So, and I really appreciate the expediting to get this done for this meeting specifically. I do also have to thank Vice President Cullum for her input throughout this, and also Councilor Steinhilber, who, as we were just starting to have the conversation, showed concern about this, has a background with Save Our Sound in regards to Cape Wind. It's, again, not our first rodeo when it comes to wind projects here at the town of Barnstable. So, and also Charlie McLaughlin, just a lot of knowledge here, and I just want to just mention that to somehow maybe just calm some fears in regards to people in town that that we are, doing the best we can and are on top of it and trying to move forward with something that can protect us. So that being said, I think we should move to a vote. I'm not seeing any further discussion. So all those in favor, please signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Great. That's unanimous as well. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to our first item of old business, Councilor Schnapp, please, item number 2024-037.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an item of old business that may be acted upon with a majority vote. Item number 2024-037, appointments to board, committee, or commission. Resolved that the Town Council appoints the following individuals to a multiple-member board, committee, commission. Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee, James Sproul, as a regular member to a term expiring 6/30/2026. Housing Committee, Asia Graves, as a regular member to a term expiring 6/30/2026. Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Appeals Committee, Aaron Webb, as a regular member to a term expiring 6/30/2024. Open Space Committee, Lev Malakoff, as a regular member to a term expiring 6/30/2024.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Councilor Luckey, please.
Thank you, President Levesque. I do have a comment on this, and perhaps I'll be the only one. I did talk to Paula about this at our meeting 2 weeks ago. And perhaps we could do an amendment to address my concern, or perhaps not. My concern is with the appointment to the Historic District Appeals Committee. I have no problem with the individual, Aaron Webb. He's a wonderful businessman in our community, and he's on the Zoning Board of Appeals. But I feel very strongly, and I've spoken about this before, people have listened to me, I'm very much into process and perception and openness. And I think because this is our only appeals committee, I mean, the Zoning Board of Appeals has that in its name, but that's kind of a first and last step. This is an appeals, and I liken it to a court process. And I don't feel comfortable with having someone on that appeals committee who serves on another board. And that's what I wanted to bring up. I think that the individuals on that board, I think the two women on there don't serve on any other committees. And I think because it is our one appeals committee, we ought to keep it as kind of clean and apart from any other entanglements that could be there, whether it's real or perceived. And that's my concern. So perhaps we could do an amendment to have that one vote separate, or if nobody else shares my concerns, I say it's a concern that I have, that committee ought to be as independent as it could be.
Councilor Etzlis.
I couldn't disagree more with removing Mr. Webb from consideration. I think that we have a number of applicants who are a number of committee members who serve on more than one board. Oftentimes it's because we don't have people lining up, but other times it's because the person is qualified, has a strong background, operates business in our community, so understands the importance of that. He happens to operate a business, actually two businesses in Hyannis, which is important. So if we set a precedent of not having this person on because he's on another board, we're setting ourselves up for doing the same with other boards and removing people. I mean, I can think of probably 4 people off the top of my head that serve on multiple boards right now. And I couldn't disagree more, so I wouldn't support removing him.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, if I could just, my argument isn't with Aaron whatsoever. It's just.
I understand that. I didn't say that. I didn't say it was personal.
This is one at a time.
Yeah, no, I do think because this is a unique appeals committee, that it deserves a little bit of a different attention. That's it. Perhaps we could bifurcate the the order or not? Okay, I'll make a motion to bifurcate the order to consider the appointment of, to the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Appeals Committee of Aaron Webb as a regular member to a term expiring 6/30/2024.
Second.
So we have first and a second to bifurcate Mr. Aaron Webb as his own item. So any discussion in regards to that? Would this be just a majority vote?
On the motion to bifurcate, yes, it would be.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
And Frank, another option for you is just to take votes on the other matters, and depending on when you want to take up the web matter, you could just take that up last in the voting sequences. You don't have to per se do a bifurcation, so I'm not sure what the intent is.
With the motion on the floor, I think she just wants to have a vote on Mr. Webb and Jen, you know.
You could certainly, in your discretion, take vote on the other members being appointed to other boards and return to this matter without a formal vote to bifurcate.
Okay, we'll vote to bifurcate first, see what happens. Let's do that. So, again, if you, Town Clerk Ann Quirk's giving me a look.
So
Okay.
I just want to make sure we're clear. So
Yes, sir.
if we vote yes, it's to
It's just,
bifurcate?
it's just to bifurcate, so it singles him out and removes him from this item.
And a no vote would keep him on?
Would keep him on the whole, yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So, those who are in favor of bifurcating Mr. Aaron Webb from the being considered as a regular member to the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Appeals Committee with a term expiring June 30, 2024, those in favor of bifurcating Aaron Webb, please signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. We have 3. Those who are opposed, please raise your hand. Are there any abstentions? I don't see any. So I believe the bifurcation does not pass. Any further discussion on the list of members of those who are looking to appointments to boards, committee, or commission? Item number 2024-037. Not seeing any. Please signify your approval for the group by raising your hand and saying aye. Any opposed? Just one. And any abstentions? Okay, it passes. Thank you. Moving on to the next item of business, Vice President Cullen, please, 2024-038.
Yes, this is item 2024-038, supplemental appropriation order in the amount of $52,993 for the Barnstable School Department fiscal year 2024 operating budget for the purpose of finding a full-time administrative assistant position for special education finances and Medicaid. It's a public hearing requiring a roll call majority vote.
Second.
We have first and a second. We have Superintendent Sarah Ahern here for the rationale. Welcome. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, and thank you. So tonight I come before you after a first reading at your last meeting, seeking a supplemental appropriation. This is a prorated amount of an annual salary for an admin assistant in the school administration building. After a year in July, having seen our operations, I enlisted the support of the Director of Human Resources to do a review of our administrative assistants in the office, their job descriptions and responsibilities, and there's an area that consistently we've come up short, and that's in the area of finance, and specifically in Medicaid, which is a huge opportunity cost. Medicaid expenses can be reimbursed based on healthcare expenses that are eligible, and there's revenue that's generated that comes into the town's general fund. We've been doing our best to try to maximize the return on Medicaid, but it's been arduous as individuals in our office have many other responsibilities that they're attending to. So upon doing an analysis of our support staff with the assistance of Chris Dwelly, Deputy Director of School Finance, and the support of Mark Milne, and here also with the support of Mark Ells, came up with new job descriptions to have one of our administrative assistants focus more on payroll and support the Office of Student Services. And the new position, which I guess at one point in time we did have as a half-time position, but that had been reduced in previous budgets. So this would be a new full-time position for an administrative assistant for special education finances and Medicaid. In terms of the fiscal impact, it would be anticipated that this position with the supplemental appropriation could be supported by the Medicaid revenue that comes into the town, and likely would more than pay for itself with additional Medicaid claims that we would be able to bill back to the state, which has a separate pot of money to support districts and towns in this effort. So hope for your support. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Ahern. Are there any questions? Oh, actually, this is a public hearing. Is anybody in the public like to speak on this item? Anybody like to speak remotely?
There is no one for this item.
So I would close the public hearing and open up to council discussion. Any questions? Council Letke, please.
Thank you. I just want to understand, so right now you're going to take some money from somewhere, but you think in the future that this will all be reimbursed, so to speak, by the additional Medicaid funds that come in? But for the moment, you're going to have to pull from somewhere?
So this would be a supplemental appropriation into the school department budget. And Mark Milne has indicated that it would be balanced based on Medicaid revenue that exceeds what has been used to balance the budget so far coming into this year. And it would be anticipated that in future years, this would be further generating additional Medicaid revenue into the general fund.
So this is just a one-time?
This is one time.
One time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council Letke. Any other questions? Councilor Snett, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Superintendent. I think I remember either reading or hearing about some schools that actually have decreased services because the amount of effort to get the reimbursement is so difficult that they just said, we're done with it. So I'm glad that you're pursuing this. Could you give us a couple examples of what services that Medicaid does reimburse for?
Sure. And you're right. There are districts that have gone away from claiming Medicaid expenses. And we're, again, doing our best, but I think with an additional support staff member, we could do better. These would be health services that would be perhaps done in an outpatient setting, but are done in school with students, many of whom may be eligible for special education services. It is not entirely related to special education, but these are health-related services that can be charged back to Medicaid. It includes nurse visits that are beyond 8 minutes in duration. We are currently not tracking that. We don't have the capacity for that, but that would be an opportunity for us to incur some more claims. Speech language services, occupational therapy and physical therapy, and services by our board certified behavior analysts might be eligible. Not everything would be eligible, but some of those services would be. So for example, if we were engaging with a therapist to teach a student to tie their shoes, that would not be an eligible expense, but something that's more health-related, having to do with their muscle tone, and a therapy related to helping them with their muscle tone would be an eligible expense. And so there's a lot of data that's tracked, data entry and accounting on the back end to kind of parse out what expenses are eligible and which wouldn't be. But those are some of the examples.
Do the students themselves have to be Medicaid eligible, or is it just the service being provided?
It's the service being provided.
Okay. And this is a tangential question, but at one point, I know that the high school had a school-based health center. Is that still active?
No, but it is something that I'm doing some research on and looking to learn more about, because I know the other districts in the state are running school-based health centers, and I do wonder what opportunities may exist.
Yeah, the Community Health Center of Cape Cod used to run it, and sometimes it just doesn't work. So, but I would hope that if it could work, that would be great.
I've had some initial conversations with our school physician as a starting point, and so yeah, it is something that I'm interested in knowing more about to see if there's applicability.
Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. Move to a vote, please. Roll call, majority vote, please. Town clerk and Quirk, sorry.
Councilors Atzelis,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Cullum,
Yes.
Cusack.
Yes.
Rapcorsetti.
Yes.
Levesque,
Yes.
Ludke,
Yes.
Schnapp.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Neary.
Yes.
Shaughnessy,
Yes.
Steinhilber.
Yes.
That passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great night. Next item of new business, Council Atzelis, please, item number 2024-039.
This is an item of new business. Item number 2024-039. Resolve that the Town Council petition the County Commissioners of Barnstable County to formally discontinue a section of County Highway, namely Old Stage Road, a portion of Pine Street, and a portion of Church Street. May be acted upon by majority vote.
Second.
First and the second, we have Town Attorney Charlie McLaughlin here for the rationale, please.
Thank you, President Levesque and members of the council. This is one of 4 petitions that we asked the council to endorse, directed to the county commissioners. We've been through this in other presentations, and this is the same circumstance. Historically, the county, through the late 1800s, or actually early 1800s, up well into the mid-1900s, had control, laid out, took charge of, and otherwise owned various roadways in the town, and in order to connect all the villages in the town, but also to other towns in the area, and they were deemed the best in the position to do so. As a result, title to those roadways rests in the county. That said, certainly for the last 30, 40, 50 years, if not longer, we've treated them, the county is out of the road repair business and road maintenance and so forth, and we have taken that over by default. And I think at this point, unless you had that list in front of you with all the legal research and the survey research that goes with it, you really don't know the difference as to which is a county road and where you devolve into town roads or cross into town roads, because they're all maintained well and they're maintained to the same standards. We're asking that this grouping, which again will be of critical importance to the next phase of sewer construction, that they be abandoned. And if we follow the statute, which of course we are doing, it will, and that's Chapter 82, Section 5, that on the county vote of the commissioners, which is scheduled for next Wednesday, to discontinue on our request, as we have made to them, once they take that vote, title automatically by statute devolves to the town. So we then take over ownership of them. We can then go in and as part of this, we petition to take over that responsibility formally to continue these as public ways. And with that approval and the vote at the county level, we then acquire that title. And at that point, we'll have full authority to work in those roadways in laying our sewer projects. So these comments, if I may, extend to each of the 2024-039, 2024-040, which is Main Street and North Main Street, Centerville, extending from South Main Street to Pine Street, 041, Finney's Lane from Route 28 to North Main Street, And 042, there's a typo there that I'm seeing. It says 942, it's actually 042. The entire length of Old Post Road from Finney's Lane to Old Stage Road. Let me just check and see. The vote as written when you get to 042 will not need to be amended. It's correctly stated. So just this rationale had a one-digit error in it. So that's what we're here to present, and we appreciate your support.
Thank you, Chair McLaughlin. And now it's up to council discussion. Council Lancis, please.
Thank you, Charlie, for the rationale. And just for clarification, so these are roads the town's been maintaining for decades.
That's correct.
And so there's no additional cost to us to
That
take
is
them over,
correct.
right?
And we,
Oh.
I'm sorry, I should, of course, mention that, and fiscal impact indicates just that, reviewed as all of these are by Mark Milne, and we're content that we've been doing this for years, and there'll be no difference in the fiscal impact on the town.
Right, because there was an assumption that they were town roads to begin with, right? And
Precisely.
after the research being done,
Precisely.
that's what we found. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks for your question.
Yep.
Very good. Okay, so this is item number 2024-039. Is there any other discussion? Councilor Lutke, please.
Yeah. Charlie, is this the same case for every other town on Cape Cod? The county doesn't maintain anything anywhere? Are they all doing the same thing we are?
I believe that is the case. We obviously don't get into the weeds with other towns, but I believe anecdotally that is the case, that the county just doesn't have the budget, doesn't have the manpower or person staffing to do so. So I believe that does apply. I haven't heard of any particular push by other towns to petition the county as we are. We need these roads for our sewer. I suspect as other towns get more heavily involved in sewer deployments, they'll be petitioning the county as well.
So the other towns, well, you don't know, but they're probably doing what we've been doing, is maintaining these regardless.
I suspect, yeah.
But they haven't gone through this process.
Not aware of them. There may well be some in the towns of Chatham, Falmouth, a few others that are getting well into the sewer deployment. They may well have done so. I'm just not aware of it.
Okay, so when was the last time the county did any maintenance, or did they ever? Never. That anyone can remember?
Dan is gone. It predates all of us, as far as I know. I would say into the 1940s, maybe 1950s at the latest.
Okay.
From what we see on the records at the registry, et cetera.
No, I just asked because I combine this with, we've been having all the discussion about private roads. So it seems like, we've got to take the private roads and we've got to take the county roads and, here we are. I mean, it is what it is, but it just seems like we get everything. So.
Yeah. As far as the county roads go, we've always had them.
Exactly.
So it isn't,
Exactly.
This is definitely an easier lift. So any other questions? Okay, so again, item number 039, council, without further discussion, please signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. I believe that's unanimous. Moving on to item number 2024-040, Councilor Shaughnessy, please, if you could.
Thank you, President Levesque. This is new business that may be acted on by majority vote. Item number 2024-040. Resolved that the Town Council petition the County Commissioners of Barnstable County to formally discontinue 2 sections of County Highway, namely the entire length of Main Street and North Main Street in Centerville Village, as written.
Second.
The first and the second. Anything to add in regards?
add,
Nothing to add. Okay, great. Any council discussion on this item? Councilor Lutke.
I just had a thought while I was reading this. Why don't we just take all of them? Right? Why do we keep divvying it up if we're going to eventually do this and there's never any maintenance? Why don't we just do a giant thing and just make it done?
A great question, and we've had that discussion on the sidebar at the county. The problem is that a lot of this is developed by the town surveyor, and he and his staff have an absolutely full plate. So we're really chipping away at this as his time and his staff's time are available to do the research, to define on the roadway where it is, to coordinate with the sewer layout to make sure we've covered from a surveying standpoint, all of the real estate that needs to be certified for title. The follow-up on this, and why it's critically necessary, is that we, our office will certify title to these roadways, that we own them, so that we can get SRF funding for the sewer work going into them. So we have to demonstrate control of the roadways to get that funding. So, but there's a lot of work that goes into it, and I know we're doing our best to group some of these and bring fewer to you and fewer sessions to you and to the county, but we're doing, staff is doing the best they can at DPW. So.
Thank you.
Councilor Rappacetti.
If I could just add to that too, I think that's why on the town's website, it says draft plan for the private roads in the town of Barnstable, because of the required due diligence the town would need to do to some of them might not be private roads, but someone needs to do the research, and that takes time and resources to
when
do
you
that.
consider, I'd have deferred to Dan Santos, but these projects, particularly on the private side, we're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of homes that need notice. The banks who have mortgages need notice. It is a lot of paperwork and engineering and survey work as well. So,
Any other questions from the council? Okay, item number 040. Without further discussion, please signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. It is unanimous. Next item of new business, Council Clark, please, if you could, item number 2024-041.
Thank you, President Levesque. This is new business, may be acted upon with a majority vote. Agenda item 2024-041. Resolve that the Town Council petition the County Commissioners of Barnstable County to formally discontinue 3 sections of County Highway, namely a portion of Finney's Lane in Centerville Village.
First and a second. Attorney McLaughlin, anything to add in regards to the rationale?
Nothing further.
Any council discussion? Okay, not seeing any, please signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Are you sticking around for the next rationale too?
absolutely.
Very
Next
good.
two. Next two.
Glad to hear it. Councilor Rappacetti, item number 2024-043. Did I skip
4-2.
4-2?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I apologize.
New
Turn the
business-
pages too fast.
Trying to get rid of
Thank
me,
you.
I know that.
New business may be acted upon by a majority vote. Item 2024-042. Resolve that the Town Council petition the County Commissioners of Barnstable County to formally discontinue 2 sections of County Highway, namely the entire length of Old Post Road in Centerville Village, as written.
Second.
First and a second. Anything to add?
Nothing further.
Okay, thank
I-
you. Oh, no, council discussion, right back to you, Councilor Rappacetti.
Well, I had a question. So is this the Old Post Road that has speed bumps on it?
Good question. I don't know the answer to it.
You're talking about the one behind the, runs behind Cape Cod Package Store?
Yeah,
That-
correct.
Yeah, that's the one with speed bumps, yep.
Yeah.
So my question is, the town put speed bumps on a county road. Is the town going to maintain the speed bumps on the town road? Because normally, the policy of the town is not to install speed bumps on public ways
Right.
unless it's associated with a crosswalk. And not to my knowledge, I don't think there's any crosswalks on Old Post Road. This is just, a rhetorical question, but if the town's going to take possession of the county road, are we going to be opening up the town to requests for speed bumps on all our public roads?
Charlie? Good evening, Mark Ells, Town Manager. I'll jump back a decade. So in effect, county roads have been treated as town public roads for decades. And therefore, nothing would change policy-wise relevant to it. I'm not quite sure when those, those traffic measures were installed, but there's no anticipation of having to modify any policy at this time. Yeah, it's odd, but the county, and to your earlier question, I'm sorry, the county hasn't maintained it in the better part of this century. So I'm not quite sure when they did. It might have been that they were the entity that had the ability to lay them out, and then the towns all just threw them in with their inventory and managed them, so.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mark.
Any other question? Okay, not seeing any. Please signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. That is unanimous. Councilor Schnapp, please, if you could, item number 2024-043.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an item of new business that may be acted upon by roll call majority vote. Item number 2024-043, acceptance of a grant of a perpetual easement providing for public access rights to a portion of Dead Neck, Osterville. As written.
This does not have roll call.
Not a roll call.
Okay.
Thank you. And we have Council McLaughlin here for
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. The town is undertaking a much-needed dredge work in Osterville, and it'll be carried out by the Barnstable County Dredge Program under contract with the town. The town needs a site close to the dredge upon which dredge spoils can be deposited, and the parties have agreed with the Commonwealth, in particular the Chapter 91 office, that Dead Neck is an ideal site for such deposits. The town has received all necessary permits for the project work, and Dead Neck is currently owned by Three Bays Preservation, and the Massachusetts Audubon Society essentially has a reverter interest if Three Bays should desire not to continue its management responsibilities out there. So both Three Bays and Mass Audubon will be joining in a relationship with the town to authorize this particular easement. Importantly, the funding for this project is state funds, and properly the legislature and the regulations that followed from that require that if we're going to enhance private property, as we will at Dead Neck, the entire island is, with the exception of the Three Bays ownership at Dead Neck itself, the entire remainder of the island is owned by Audubon, and which are obviously not government entities, but they will be receiving improvements, the benefit of the improvements with the sand deposits on that property. And the state regulations require that if we are going to provide that benefit, that we must get something back in return. And the something here is a perpetual easement for public access to the property. And with that quid pro quo, the Commonwealth is blessing and funding the project. There will be, particularly for the Dead Neck area, given its sensitivity to presence of piping plovers, roseate terns, and other endangered or near endangered species, that there will be, as there is currently, an active management plan in place, et cetera. But as far as this perpetual easement, there will be some time restrictions that will be administered ad hoc by whoever is finally owning this property. We anticipate, frankly, that much sooner than later, Audubon will be taking ownership of this entire parcel, currently standing in Three Bays' name. Their missions changed, of course, more directed to water quality rather than bird management and safety and so forth. So, at the end of the day, the process will be that this will be granted, the public will be granted access, there'll be time limits on it, time of year restrictions, given the fledgling status of the various species that are out on the island. I will just note one other as an aside. We have negotiated, yet to finalize a one-year lease with both entities at no consideration from us to allow this deposit to take place. We have a very narrow window of availability of the county dredge, and if we miss that window, we may get bumped. This much-needed work and potential breakthrough at Dead Neck might not get done for a year or longer. So this is really time-sensitive. We appreciate the cooperation of both Audubon and Three Bays, and we look forward to your support on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair McLaughlin. Any questions to my left in regards to any council discussion? To my right, Councilor Cusack, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I don't know, Charlie, if this is for you, but any clarification on actual usage? I don't know if you're in possession of that right now. I think possibly Councilor Rapcorsetti and myself might occasionally be on the receiving end of historic users of that space who have found sort of a situation where they've tried to visit and been sort of effectively, I don't want to say repelled, but something close to that word. And so I don't know if you have any clarification in that regard.
To clarify, we haven't gotten that far in the details. We are expecting to negotiate or contribute to, at some point, at least that would be the subject of the negotiation, some amount for the management cost incurred by Audubon, who has, under license from the Commonwealth, the responsibility for overall management. And Three Bays is contributing sums from their resources to Mass Audubon, who is controlling the whole island. So I think it's a fair question, and we certainly can provide more contact with that. I've seen, I think I know what you're talking about. So.
All right. Yeah, great. And then this also might not be for you, Charlie, but maybe if you could characterize the scope of work of the actual dredging. Is it navigable channel or hazards for navigation or tidal flushing or all of the above?
I think it's all of the above. There are various sites that they're going to be dredging from. Dan and Griffin have been, and Griffin particularly, have been very, very active in scoping out that area needing work. One of the main purposes, or the benefits anyway, is that with washout and scouring occurring at Dead Neck, it's disappearing, and it needs this renourishment as soon as possible. I hear you, and I will certainly mention your concern and alert you when we're having discussions with Audubon on what this management agreement that we're going to be being asked to help support materializes, and certainly it's a fair comment that the town, if we're going to be supporting it, should have input and maybe deconflict some of the protectiveness that's appropriate, but maybe needs to be more sensitive. So I've heard some of those complaints as well. So.
Thank you, Councilor Cusack. Councilor Rapcorsetti, please.
In discussions with Audubon, too, you might want to make sure that you don't have to be a member of Audubon to go on the island, because there was a time where you had to have a Audubon membership to step foot on the island, and there were some, gunslingers there for a while that just wouldn't let you go anywhere near the island, and we don't want to see that.
Well,
but I will continue to go on the record that I'd like to see some of this nourishment go on our own beach, and that's Ropes Beach, which is severely lacking in beach nourishment. And if they're going to be doing navigable channels close by to that, and I know they're going into Katuitt Harbor, then that's where I'd like to see it deposited, or some of it at some point.
I will, of course, divert to DPW, but that we need this site. We probably need other sites for appropriate deposits, and that's all part of this Chapter 91 licensing process. I know that DPW is anecdotally ramping up a whole series of permitting procedures and processes for different sites within the Three Bays area that need attention, and we're hoping once we're doing a 1-year no compensation lease. Our next step will be, immediately following this vote and so forth, we then are going to be negotiating a much longer term lease so that if we need to have a deposit, obviously the practical problem is that the dredge cannot pump for extended distances. We're not barging and dropping, we're pumping. So that limits some of our options. But to the point of needing, we know that the bay needs a lot more dredging, a lot of soft spots there that need to be cleared out. That will have a number of benefits, including water flow and flushing and all the rest of it. So, and I know Dan and Griffin are working diligently on those. So, all fair comments. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rep Crissetti. Any other questions? Okay, you're not seeing any, so it's a majority vote. Please raise your hand and signify your approval. I'm sorry, please signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. That is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next item of new business. Council Lucky, please, if you could, item number 2024-044.
Okay, this is an item of new business. It may be acted upon by majority vote. Item 2024-044, transfer order in the amount of $49,000 from the Community Service Department fiscal year 2024 personnel budget to the fiscal year 2024 Community Services Department operating expense budget for the purpose of funding security services contract for town beaches.
Second.
We have first and a second. We have Director of Community Services, Christopher Ganella, with us tonight for the rationale.
Yes, good evening, President-elect. Good evening, Town Council. As most of you are aware, the town has received countless requests for residents to secure certain beaches, beach parking lots for numerous years. As the town tries to navigate a balance between access and safety, we propose a pilot program to subcontract the securing and opening of Calmus, Covels, and Craigville Beach. We've had numerous disturbances. I remember last spring, safety concerns, and the town was forced into securing those beaches earlier, and the town manager has made action to extend those shoulder seasons, and we are currently slated to stop closing them on October 9th. This would allow us to subcontract out securing those 3 locations from October 10th through May 27th. Again, it's a pilot program to see how this is going to work. Currently, the Department of Public Works, as I mentioned, is filling in to secure and unlock these beaches during extended times. And the DPW, as everybody knows, has personnel shortages, and securing and opening these beaches daily is not sustainable. The Barnstable Police Department, as you all know as well, has shortages in staff, and this was our solution to come up with something that would work as a pilot program to see the litmus test of this is viable moving forward. The Community Services Department, its personnel budget is projected to have surplus in this year, and we're going to be looking to fund this through vacancy savings. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Ganella. Any council answers, please?
Thank you, Chris, for your summary of this. Have you chosen the company yet, the contractor to handle this?
The request for quotes closed today at 2 o'clock.
Okay, all right. And I just want to say, as far as Covels and Craigville are concerned, since I've been on the council, I've received a lot of calls about complaints at those beaches, in season, off season, mostly in the off season when the gates aren't locked at night. It becomes a place for people to party and do other things. I can't imagine that folks are there to actually enjoy the beach in the moonlight when it's midnight or 1 a.m. And I think and with the problems that we had Memorial Day weekend, with the shooting and things of that sort, hopefully this will minimize the locations that some of the folks who have ill intent, places for them to go. And I do appreciate the town manager's efforts and DPW's efforts with making this happen. I'm aware of the shortages. I actually volunteered because I don't live too far away to actually go unlock the gates at 5 in the morning. But I think that was a pretty bold statement because I don't know that I do that consistently. And I do know that there was a challenge from a staffing standpoint where one of the beaches parking lots wasn't being unlocked in time in the morning, which upset some of the locals who want to access the parking lot and the waterway. So this will eliminate that challenge. So I'd be in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Atzos. Madam Vice Chair.
So this is like so sweet. So it's been, I think, since before I was elected that I've been asking for protection for the people who live around Calmus Beach, even in the form of a pilot program. I think the biggest win is that we are all understanding that something needs to be done to prevent the illegal activity that's occurring on our beaches. So I'm thankful for Councillor Atzelis's voice to be added to mine, which I know over the years turned into a drone. I ask my husband, he says it all the time. I'm not even listening to you, he says. And I know that. But I'm just thankful that at this point we can at least see if it makes a difference. I think we've seen that it does make a difference. And, I look forward to, securing veterans and Hathaways as well, where we've seen a lot of criminal activity that ends up costing taxpayers a lot of money in repairs. And also, it's extremely unsafe. So I'm just really thankful that this is happening, and I hope I can count on the support from my fellow councilor members for this one. It's a big one for my precinct. Thank you.
Councilor Schnapp, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could you just tell us what times the gates will be locked and opened? You might have said it, and I...
No, I didn't say
Okay.
it. We're trying to follow the same pattern as that we've did in the or during the shoulder seasons. Begin securing at 9 p.m. and begin opening at 5 a.m. daily. With that being said, to Mr. Atzelis's point, we've also left some flexibility within that quote, understanding that fishermen might want access earlier. They're tide dependent, not daylight dependent. So we have left the flexibility to that. And just to elaborate, Councilor Cullum, we also are submitting a capital improvement project, and we have been in discussions with DPW to look at implementing something specifically at Calmus, and also trying to also include Cobbles and Craigvilles moving forward.
The contractor won't be providing any other services other than opening and locking the gates. There won't be any other...
Similar service to what the DPW provides now, basically going through with a truck with flashers, notifying people that they're going to be closing the gate, and then closing the gate, not waiting around or doing something. And then PD will actually have to be notified to unlock.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Schnapp. Councilor Rapkuseti, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you, Chris. We're talking about the beaches, the big beaches that have gates on them. But let's remember, too, and I'll be curious to see how this pilot program works, but let's remember, too, to look at the beaches that aren't locked up, such as Loop Beach, where you have M80s in the portable potties that end up in the waterways. The kids are vandalizing and tossing them over and putting them in the water. So looking at securing our beaches, especially the ones that aren't gated, we might want to look at deterring with cameras and maybe even, fake cameras so that people think they're being watched, but maybe they're not. But no, but they won't know. But whatever we can do to secure the beaches.
We'll definitely take that under advisement and discuss. Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you, Councilor Rapkuseti. Councilor Lutke, please.
Thank you. What's the duration of the contract, Chris?
It's 232 days. It's basically from the 10th of October to May 27, 2023.
Okay. And then after that, DPW will do the work?
Again, this is a pilot program, so we're going to have to see where we end up with the CIP process, if we can implement and where we could put these other things in. I would anticipate that the shoulder season would then be extended to cover what we typically would close, which would be June, the third week in June.
Yeah.
It's going to be secured in that shoulder
Okay.
season. I'm just not
And
sure
it
of
just
the
goes-
avenue of
yeah.
how it's going to be secured at this
It goes back to some of the discussions we were having about the medical benefits and things, because I see you're taking it from your vacancy savings, and we're having to do it because there's vacancies in DPW. There's so many vacancies, but it's kind of maybe a new paradigm that we contract some of this stuff out. But are you doing anything in terms of your vacancies? Do you see any prospects coming on to fill some of your vacancies, or?
Yes, the assistant director's position closes tomorrow. There's been 47 applicants, so I was spreading that with
Wow.
other directors around, and we will have interviews scheduled, and we have a panel, and yes.
But you
I think
still
we
see you said it's due to vacancy savings. You still see enough savings in your vacancies to cover this,
Point of order, can we stick to the item, please?
right?
Yes, the last 4 months, I haven't had an assistant director, and we anticipate, even that alone would cover the majority of this cost.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lutke. Any other questions on this item? Okay, not seeing any. Just making sure I got this right. If you could signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Ganella. Have a great night. What's that? Nope. Yep. Okay, moving on to the next item of new business. Councilor Cusack, if you could please, item number 2024-045.
My pleasure, Mr. President. Yeah, this is new business item number 2024-045 to be referred to a public hearing on October 19th, 2023, an appropriation order in the amount of $9,800 for the redesign of the Hyannis Youth and Community Center website.
Second.
First and second, again referring to a public hearing. Please signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. I believe that's unanimous. Any opposed? I didn't see anybody. Okay, just making sure. Right. That passes unanimously. And the last item on our agenda, Councilor Neary, if you could please, item number 2024-046.
My pleasure, Mr. President. This is new business to be referred to a public hearing on 10/19/23. It's an appropriation and transfer order in the amount of $3,500,000 from the general fund reserves to the capital trust fund as written.
Second.
We have first and a second, referring to a public hearing. If I can ask the council, please raise your hand, signify your approval by saying aye. I believe that's unanimous. That's our last item of business for this agenda.
Adjourn.
First and a second, please, council, if you could, raise your hand, signify your approval by saying aye. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.